Welcome to Lesson 9 of Croy's Primer to Biblical Greek. And Lesson 9, we are now going to add some information on verbs. So we talked a lot about different nouns and pronouns and adjectives. And now we're going to add some information here on verbs. And what we're going to learn about is the middle and passive voices. So the middle and passive voice have to do with how the subject relates to the verb. So I have a sentence here: the surgeon cuts the patient with a scalpel. Okay, so our verb is cuts, and the subject is the surgeon, and the surgeon is doing the cutting. Okay, the surgeon is active in the cutting. What if we want to make the surgeon, or I guess I don't want to make the surgeon passive here. What if we want to make the verb passive? And so here we want to make the patient the subject. How would we change this sentence into the passive voice? Well, we do it like this. The patient is cut by the surgeon, surgeon with a scalpel. Okay? So now, rather than the subject of the sentence, the patient, actively doing the verb is being done to the subject. The subject is now passive in the action. It's receiving the action. So this is active, and this is passive. Okay? And then in Greek, they have also what is called the middle voice. And it's hard for us English people to understand because we don't really have a similar thing in Greek, or in English, I mean. And even here, it says that the middle voice is relatively infrequent. The middle voice translatable is infrequent in Biblical Greek. It is quite frequent, but it's quite frequent in what Croy here is calling the deponent. So how Croy is defining deponent is verbs that have a passive form of the verb, but they're active in meaning. And you can actually see that if we go to our vocabulary. So here, like dierchome, that has passive endings. We didn't even talk about the endings, but ome, I, ete, omethe, esthe, onte. Those are the passive and middle endings in the present. So here, your dictionary form gives you the word in a passive form, right? It's not like here, archo, the omega, which you're used to. You're used to with having that omega as the indication of verbs. If the lexical form has a passive, or actually middle ending here, this means that it is deponent. I'm stumbling on deponent because this is a critiqued category today. It probably doesn't actually exist. And there's still kind of debates over what exactly we do with deponent. But the idea is still true, that there are these words where the lexical form is middle rather than active. It doesn't have an active form. And in English, we translate it as active. Okay, that is true. In English, we translate it as active. The debate is over how we should understand it in Greek. And a lot of people are saying that we should understand the subject as being affected in some way. But for your sake, here in Lesson 9, what you should focus on is the difference between active and passive that we talked about here, that the subject in the active does the action verse, in the passive, the action is done to the subject, and in the middle, if it's in the middle, that typically means that it is a word with passive endings, or middle or passive endings, but we translate it actively. Okay, so middle here is literally in the middle. It has these forms, these morphological forms, but it has the active meaning. The middle sometimes can have like a reflexive sense, but it's actually kind of rare, where it would be like the surgeon cutting himself, or if we say like I wash my hands, or like, I'm washing myself, I'm showering. Those are actions that the subject does, but they do it to themselves. Hopefully that was as clear as mud. But the two ones you really need to understand here are passive is done to the subject. So going back, memorizing the forms, I think it's helpful to do the chant, to add on to your chant now. So we have O, is, I, om, and ete, usin. And now add o me, I, ete, o me, the, este, on, te. And to repeat that to yourself over and over and over. Get that into your head. I find chanting, for some reason, it works for me, and it's worked for many others. So just sit and chant these verb endings. Get them down. The other thing that Croy talks about in here is this idea of a personal agent with the passive and an impersonal dative of means. So going back to our example here, so our passive one, the patient is cut by the surgeon with a scalpel. Okay? So in Greek, here, this is the personal agent. They are the one that is doing the action. In Greek, this word here will be ipo. The patient is cut ipo, the surgeon. And then here, this, with a scalpel, this is the means or the instrument by which the agent uses to cut the patient. Okay? So ipo is used with the personal agent, and then often this, so scalpel would either be in the dative, or sometimes you'll see it with like dia, or even sometimes n, and other prepositions will be used here, but dia and n, or just the dative, are common here. That's the way to talk about the agent and the instrument, or the means, for the action of the verb. And that brings us to the end here. There's some irregular ones, and it gives some other information that's not as important, but okay, go to work.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Bible Toolbox. All of the resources mentioned in this episode are posted on our website, thebibletoolbox.com. There you can also find out more information on how to give and support us, and we have loved all of the encouragement and feedback we've received from you, so thanks so much.